0517 hours. Open water. The surface search radar produces a clean return. Not a spike, not an artifact, a solid contact holding steady at first, then accelerating. The track updates continuously, speed climbing, bearing no longer drifting. The contact is not crossing the display, it is aligning with it. Surface contact, new acceleration. The words go into the log at the same cadence as everything else. But steel does not accelerate like that without a reason. The horizon is empty to the eye. The sea is flat and the sky is pale and nothing visible has changed. Inside the ship, the systems have already begun forming a picture that the naked eye cannot see yet. The contact is closing from the forward quadrant on a bearing that is nearly reciprocal to the carrier's heading. Closest point of approach recalculates, then recalculates again, smaller each time. No AIS signal. No response to the initial bridge-to-bridge hail. No course correction that would suggest the other ship has noticed. It is pointing at a carrier strike group. No alarm sounds. There is no announcement over the internal circuit. But the watch feels it, the precise moment when something shifts from background ambient to deliberate. Every bridge and CIC has that moment. This is it. Speed 20 knots, then 24. The watch officer looks up from the console without urgency, without alarm, with focus. The captain's eyes go to the display, not to the horizon. The display tells the true story. Two converging vectors that have no business converging. The first hail goes out on standard bridge-to-bridge frequencies. Professional, calm, without a single word that could be characterized as threatening. No reply. A second hail follows on the same channel, then on the International Guard frequency. Same silence. The contact silhouette is sharpening through the long-range optics now. Small hull, military profile. The geometry of the mast and the placement of deck hardware are not civilian. This ship was not built to move cargo. It was built to operate in exactly this kind of situation. The label holds unidentified surface contact, but it will not hold much longer. In the Combat Information Center, the track is promoted. Sensor priority shifts. Nothing aggressive yet. No fire control radar from the contact, no weapons movement, no emission that crosses the line from surveillance to targeting. But geometry does not require a trigger event to carry meaning. A ship does not hold a direct bearing on a carrier group through two unanswered hails and two course recalculations unless that bearing is intentional. The carrier does not alter course. That decision carries as much tactical content as any order that could be given. Course changes are messages. An evasive turn tells the approaching ship that its approach produced an effect, which tells every future ship considering this tactic that it produces effects. Holding the line removes that information from the encounter entirely. It also places the full burden of the next decision on the approaching vessel. The contact continues to explain nothing. Through the bridge wing binoculars, the hull cuts cleanly through the water, wake spreading wider as throttle increases. The bow is lifting, not much, just enough to confirm hard throttle. This is not drift, not a navigation correction, not a vessel that failed to update its chart. This is an approach being driven. A quiet order moves through the ship, not broadcast, not announced. Stations adjust, systems shift from passive monitoring to active tracking posture. Everything remains within standing rules of engagement. Everything is legal, deliberate, and documented. The contact is now inside the range where intent matters as much as capability. Another hail transmits, silence returns. Then the contact's radar suite activates. Not fire control mode, search mode, but active, powered, sweeping. That detail goes into the log with a precise timestamp, because emissions do not lie, even when the people producing them choose not to speak. The approaching ship has stopped passively moving through the water and started actively measuring its surroundings. It knows exactly where it is. It knows exactly what it is approaching. It is continuing anyway. On the American side, no fire control radar reaches back. No weapon systems announce themselves. The electronic warfare suite runs in passive collection mode, capturing every emission the contact produces. Frequency, sweep rate, power level, modulation pattern. The record that is building in these minutes will outlast the encounter by years. At 0524, the classification updates. Long-range optics resolve the silhouette cleanly. Hull form, mast configuration, the specific geometry of weapons placement on the forward deck. The profile matches a known type, Iranian naval warship. Not a patrol craft, not a customs vessel, not a ship that could plausibly claim accidental proximity to a carrier strike group. Purpose-built military hardware on a deliberate intercept bearing. The confirmation travels through the ship without ceremony. Nationality does not change physics and does not change procedure, but it changes context because now every subsequent action exists within a specific geopolitical framework that neither side will be able to rewrite. The Iranian ship does not slow. Its throttle holds and its wake stays wide. Deck movement becomes visible through the optics. Figures repositioning on the forward section, spacing out along the rail, hands resting in places that hands do not rest during routine transit. The forward gun mount remains unmanned but uncovered. That is a choice. Covering a gun mount is a simple action. Leaving it uncovered while making a high-speed approach on a foreign carrier is a signal, and the signal is being logged. Still no response to hails. Naval crews are trained to answer radios even when every other aspect of their behavior is confrontational. Silence is not an oversight. It is a statement that the message is already being delivered by other means and that words would only complicate the delivery. The CIC tightens its tracking loop. Range gates narrow. Bearings update at a rate that reflects the closing speed between the two ships. Closest point of approach calculates again. Smaller. The Iranian radar emissions increase in power. The sweep rate tightens. The character of the emission is transitioning, not yet fire control lock, but measurably closer to targeting behavior than surveillance behavior. The electronic warfare team logs the frequency shift, the dwell time, the power differential from the baseline emission captured 20 minutes earlier. This is no longer a ship that wandered into the area. It is building a solution. The carrier speed holds. Formation spacing on the escorts holds. The predictability of the strike group's geometry is itself a form of pressure. It removes the possibility that the approaching ship can attribute its own behavior to confusion or reaction. Every subsequent Iranian escalation owns itself completely. At 0531, the geometry crosses past the range where any collision could be described as accidental. The contact adjusts its heading fractionally, just enough to keep the carrier precisely centered ahead of its bow. That small heading correction made in real time to maintain the intercept is as significant as anything that has happened so far. It means someone on the Iranian bridge is watching the same numbers and actively managing them. This is not momentum, this is navigation with intent. The Iranian radar spikes again, power higher, sweep tighter, repetition rate elevated. The distinction between fire control preparation and aggressive search is narrowing to the point where the operational difference is academic. The electronic warfare team captures everything. The CIC logs it with the same flat precision it has applied to every event since the contact first appeared. A third hail transmits, shorter this time, more direct. The answer is the same silence it has always been. On the Iranian deck, the forward gun mount is no longer just uncovered. Personnel have moved closer to it. Not manning it, close to it. The camera records the position of every visible crew member at every time-stamped second. This footage will not be broadcast. It will be available when the questions come later about what actually happened. At 0534, the helicopter detachment receives the signal. Stand by to launch. No announcement. Pilots step onto the deck. Rotor crews move with the economy of people who have done this many times. Blades remain still. The helicopter's engines are not running. The aircraft is not yet visible to the approaching ship. But the preparation is real, and the threshold it represents is precisely calibrated. The contact increases speed again, 26 knots. That pace is near the edge of what this hull type runs economically. The ship is burning fuel margin to hold this approach, burning option margin. Each minute that passes without a change in course costs the Iranian ship something it cannot recover. If the encounter ends in disengagement now, the record shows an aggressive approach held until the last viable exit. If the encounter continues, the record will show more. The helicopter spins up, not a rush. Measured, controlled. Rotor wash moves across the flight deck and over the water, visible from a significant distance. The aircraft lifts and holds low, inside American formation space, not advancing toward the Iranian ship. Cameras activate, sensors lock. The Seahawk becomes an extension of the documentation that has been running since 0517. The Iranian radar responds. Another sweep, stronger, faster, logged. Through the helicopter's optics, the Iranian bridge windows are clear. Figures visible inside. The ship's course holds unchanged, but the rate of approach has begun to ease almost imperceptibly. A fraction of a knot, visible in the wake behind the stern rather than in any instrument reading. At 0538, the laser designator activates from the helicopter. A steady green point settles on the Iranian bridge glass. non-lethal, non-damaging, non-aggressive under any legitimate interpretation of maritime rules, and completely impossible to ignore. It carries no sound, it requires no translation. Every professional naval crew on Earth understands what it means. We are recording you specifically, we are tracking you in real time, and what you choose to do next will exist in high definition with timestamp and geotag. The transmission follows on open frequency, calm, flat, recorded on both sides. You are operating unsafely in international waters. Alter course immediately. Repeated in Farsi. On the Iranian bridge, something shifts. A figure moves toward the forward glass. Another turns away from it. The wake behind the stern shortens by a margin that is no longer invisible to the sensors watching it. 26 knots becomes 24. That is the first crack in the approach geometry. Not a turn, not a radio call. A 2-knot reduction in speed that someone on the Iranian bridge chose to make. That choice is logged with the same precision as every other event in the record. The helicopter holds its orbit without advancing. The carrier holds its course without reacting. The pressure that produced the speed reduction did not come from a weapon or a maneuver. It came from documentation made inevitable. The understanding that every subsequent foot of distance closed is being captured from multiple angles simultaneously, that the record cannot be edited after the fact, and that the record will travel far beyond this patch of open water. At 0542, the speed drops again, 22 knots. The bow settles fractionally lower as the hydrodynamic forces relax. Personnel on the Iranian deck step back from the rail. The figure near the forward gun mount moves away from it. Then the first lateral heading adjustment appears, 2 degrees off the intercept bearing, then 3. The Iranian bow is no longer pointed at the center of the carrier group. The approach geometry that had been held with such precision for 25 minutes is dissolving degree by degree. No celebration on the American bridge. Breakpoints are fragile. The helicopter stays in its orbit. The carrier holds its course. The record continues accumulating. At 0544, the Iranian ship transmits for the first time. The words are measured, chosen carefully for what they do not say as much as for what they do. United States naval vessel. We are conducting routine patrol operations in proximity to Iranian waters. No acknowledgement of the carrier's right of transit. No recognition of the unanswered hails. No reference to the approach geometry that the entire encounter has been built around. The language is constructed to establish a narrative without conceding the one that the record already contains. The American response is immediate and precise. You are operating in international waters. Your actions are being recorded. Maintain safe separation. Nothing else. No debate, no escalation, no additional language that could complicate the simplicity of what the documentation already shows. Distance stabilizes, then begins to grow. 6 nautical miles. The geometry is no longer converging. The helicopter completes its final recording orbit and returns to the flight deck without drama. Sensors remain active until the last second of the approach. Nothing is left undocumented. At 0550, the contact is downgraded, not dismissed, filed. The reconstruction begins inside the CIC with the same precision that marked the whole encounter. Radar emissions are aligned against the optical timeline. Course changes are mapped against the communication log. The account that emerges has no adjectives, no interpretation, no characterization. The Iranian warship accelerated directly toward a carrier strike group on an intercept bearing. It ignored 3 identification hails across 40 minutes of approach. It activated radar systems in a progressive pattern, consistent with fire control preparation while continuing to close distance. It reduced speed and altered course only after a helicopter appeared and began producing time-stamped, geotagged footage of its approach from directly overhead. The carrier held its original course throughout the entire encounter without deviation. Those are the facts. The facts require nothing added to them. The Iranian warship operated on the premise that proximity carries leverage. That putting a military hull inside close maneuvering distance of a carrier group without communication and without provocation from the other side creates a situation the carrier group must react to. The premise failed because it depends on a reaction that can be characterized as escalation, and no such reaction was produced. The carrier's predictability denied the leverage. The helicopter's documentation denied the deniability. The silence on the American radio denied the pretext. A ship that presses an intercept approach on a carrier group for 40 minutes and leaves with a speed reduction and a heading change owns the record of those 40 minutes entirely. The record travels wherever it needs to travel. The carrier group moves on. Modern naval power is not measured only in missiles loaded and aircraft fueled. It is measured in who controls the conditions of the encounter, the tempo, the geometry, the escalation threshold, and who spends the encounter responding to those conditions. One ship controlled all three simultaneously from the moment the contact appeared on the scope. The other ship spent 40 minutes learning that proximity is not leverage when the ship it is aimed at refuses to provide the reaction that would make it so. No shots fired, no damage taken, no statements issued. The carrier continues its transit on the same heading it held when the contact first appeared. The sea is flat and the horizon is clear, and the wake behind the carrier is straight. If this breakdown gave you a clear picture of how escalation control actually functions in a carrier encounter, subscribe and share it. More of these analyses keep coming as long as you are here for them.